I always thought that handling security should be a responsibility of backend developers or DevOps engineers. But nowadays, more and more functionality is being forwarded to the front end. And that is why I believe that everyone should be taking care of security. And that is also why I have selected this topic for my today's presentation, which is more secure Nuxt apps by default. My name is Jakub and I work at Allokai as senior developer and advocate. Apart from that, I'm also a Google developer expert in web performance. I am part of the Nuxt team and I'm also an ambassador for Algolia, Storyblock, Cloudinary, and Supabase. So after this presentation, you will be a security ninja. That sounds great, right? But the reality is that it is not possible. It is not possible to transfer to you all the security knowledge that is necessary to build secure applications out of the box. So my idea is to make you more aware of security risks and issues that can appear in modern web applications. Because I believe that if you are aware of these issues, you will be able to protect your application against them. So for that, I would recommend you to become familiar with the concept of OWASP and specifically OWASP Top 10. So OWASP is a standard awareness document for both developers and web application security specialists. And it represents broad consensus about the most critical security risks to web applications. And as you can see, I marked two places here. One is standard awareness document, which basically means that this OWASP Top 10 is a document. And the second one, security risks. So it is a document that will showcase to you the most popular security risks. OWASP Top 10 is also recognized by developers as the first step towards more secure coding. This time as well, marked with green color, first step. So you shouldn't be considering OWASP Top 10 as the one and only solution for making your app more secure. More like it is a first step, like a solid first step. So if you look at the OWASP Top 10 website, you will see basically this. And if we zoom in a bit, we will see this list of most popular security risks that can appear in your web application. And as you can see on the left side, we have 2017, and on the right side, there is 2021. And you see that the list, both the order and the elements of the list are changing, which means that this list is evolving over and over, like all the time, because new issues or new risks are appearing and we have to make our apps more and more secure based on changing environments. And there is also a very big resource of knowledge in terms of making your app more secure on OWASP website, which is basically a list of checklists, like cheat sheets, that you can review to see if your application is secure in certain area. So for example, we have cheat sheet for REST applications, GraphQL applications, applications built with Ruby, and so on and so on. So let's take a look at some of these security risks. We won't be taking a look at all of them. We will be focusing only on few selected ones. So first of all, we have injections, and the two main attacks here or risks are cross-site scripting and SQL injections. And in terms of SQL injections, you might think that this is a very old vulnerability and it doesn't appear anymore, but you would be surprised how many production websites have this kind of vulnerability still. So in both cases, the idea is that the attacker is injecting some kind of malicious code in either SQL, so our database, or in the application through JavaScript, for example. and then this malicious code is being is basically getting the data shouldn't have access to, like users, passwords, stuff like that. Going further, we have broken access control. Access control means that our application will allow to get certain data if we are properly authorized. So for example, we are logged in, or we are part of organization or group that has access to certain resource. So broken access control means that the attacker can have access to the data that basically he or she shouldn't have. And my favorite one, which is DOS or DDoS, which means denial of service, means that our application is served on a server that can serve or handle only certain amount of requests. So if attacker manages to send too many requests, our application won't be able to serve the responses to these requests and basically give up. So we have DOS, which is denial of service, and DDoS, which is like the distributed denial of service, which is the routing is basically distributed between many different so-called zombie devices. It can be mobile phones, it can be desktop devices, and so on and so on. And I have one interesting bonus case, which is called malicious NPM packages and dependency confusion. This can happen for anyone who is building web applications nowadays. So how it works is basically we have a user that is supposed to fetch a package that is stored in a private registry, like private NPM registry. It could be Verdaccio, it could be something else. The idea is that this registry is like a private one, and only authorized users should have access to it, should be able to fetch this package. So what the user does instead, unintentionally, is to fetch the package with the same name, but from the public registry, like the public NPM. And this package can contain a malicious code. And this is a real case, and unfortunately this is in Polish. The article is in Polish, but you can search for the ones in English for malicious NPM packages. So in this case, what the bounty was, because there are these challenges for ethical hackers, that you can basically detect the vulnerabilities and get bounties, like rewards for it. So the author of this attack managed to create these packages for very popular big companies like PayPal, Microsoft, Apple, Shopify, Netflix, Tesla, or Uber, so big ones. And this code, what it was doing something what is called reverse shell. And this reverse shell was basically able to do commands on your device, like remotely. So someone could operate or do commands on your laptop or on your device remotely, completely. And the reward was about $130,000 for such a bounty. So quite a lot of money. In terms of securing your applications, I always say that the native browser APIs are your best help. So let's start with HTTP security headers. So how they work is basically on the server, we are sending those security response headers to inform the browser what it can do. So in this case, for example, we can instruct it that it can work only with HTTPS, that it cannot use microphone, like all the different types of services like a microphone, geolocation, a camera, and so on and so on. And that the resources on this website, on this browser, on this particular website can only fetch resources from certain domain or origin. So they work like this. So you have the name of the header and the value. So you might have heard about content security policy or X-frame options, strict transport security. There is actually quite few of them. But the idea is that we can configure them on the server to instruct the browser what it can do. But this happens or works with server applications, the applications that have a server. So what we can do if our application is static. So we can use something called HTTP equif. I hope I pronounce it correctly. So what it does, we can configure it as a meta tag. So we can do it in our static applications on the pure frontend. And we can somehow emulate the response header that could be sent from the server. In this particular example, we are emulating the content security policy header, and we are passing it to it as a content, the same value that normally would be sent from the server. We can also configure browser permissions, and these browser permissions basically allow us to disable certain APIs that can be enabled on the client side. So in this particular case, we are showing the geolocation. So if the server sends the response header permission policy with the value geolocation with these brackets, basically if we try to access the geolocation of the user, this is the code in the middle, we'll get the error that geolocation has been disabled in this document by permission policy. Next, we have basic auth. So basic auth basically allows the user to only access the website if they provide correct credentials. So how it works is that the server sends the header www authenticate with the value basic realm and value of this realm, and then the client that wants to authenticate needs to send a authorization header with basic and these credentials. It's like usually user and password. And if these credentials are okay, that user can access this website. Otherwise, they will get 401 error. But please just don't use this kind of example of username and password if you're aiming to have this kind of credentials for your basic authentication. You can also just skip it because this doesn't protect anyone or anything. So how can we make Vue and Nuxt apps more secure? There are very good cheat sheets both on Vue.js documentation website and HTML security cheat sheet, which basically lists all the things that you can do on the front end, on the client side, to make your application more secure, which I highly recommend you to check. However, if we take a look at Nuxt, we have access to the Nuxt Security module, which basically utilizes the OWASP and configures your app automatically so that it follows OWASP security patterns and recommendations to make your app more secure by default. And it does it by using the HTTP headers, some of the ones that I showed you already, and the middleware as well. So without any configuration, Nuxt Security comes with security response headers that work for both SSR and SSG applications like server-side and static applications. It comes with a middleware for request size and rate limiters, which basically protects your app from too many requests and too big requests. We have access to cross-site scripting validation, which protects us from situation where someone will send malicious code through GET or POST requests. We have access to cross-origin resource sharing, which is like a course in short, where we can decide from where this application can fetch the data, from what origins. We also can use the middleware for allowed HTTP methods, where we can decide what methods are allowed for certain endpoints. So on certain endpoints, we might want to basically just enable post or delete or get requests. And we also have support for cross-site request forgery protection. So onto the demo time. I have Nuxt application here running, which is basically like a very simple Nuxt app. It doesn't have any UI library, it doesn't have any components. It is just a simple Hello World Nuxt application. So if we inspect it in the browser, we will see this Nuxt welcome page. And now if we inspect it, go to network and we refresh the page, in here we will see response headers. We have connection, content length, content type, date, x powered by. What will happen when we enable or uncomment Nuxt Security module is that when we inspect this, the same document, we will now see that the response header section is much bigger. We have security headers for a content security policy, cross-origin opener policy, permissions policy, and many, many more configured for us automatically according to OWASP recommendations. This comes by default in terms of response headers. We also have access to the cross-site scripting validation, which basically means that if we say text and in here say script, and let's say alert 1, and we close it, script, like this, what will happen? I forgot that it needs to be a param. Is that we will get 400 BAT requests. This basically means that this underlying cross-site scripting validation middleware triggered this text that we sent in this GET request as a malicious code. Okay, so this is about some of the features. For others, I would need to pass some configuration. So in here, in the Nuxt config.ts file, we usually pass some configuration to either Nuxt framework or the modules that are part of our application. So we have access to the security object where we can configure all our Nuxt security configuration. So in here, I have access also to headers where I can say, for example, that I want XSS protection to be 1. And if we inspect the browser, but right now without this, we will see that right now XSS protection is 1. So let's change it to 0. And we see that it was changed. This configuring headers like this is global. So this means that these headers will be configured like this globally. So globally, XSS protection will have value of 0. However, with Nuxt Security module, we also have access to root rules. So what can happen is that we can do root rules, pass our root, so let's say secret, and in here we can say security, and the same as above, headers, and in here we can say XSS protection 1. This will mean that for the root with /secret, the value of the header XSS protection will be set to 1. And this works for all the headers, and it works for all middleware functionalities that are part of the module. So I want to show you one more thing. In here, what I will do is I will say rate limiter, and I will say tokens per interval, and I will set it to 5. And interval, I will set it to, let's say, 10 seconds. So right now what will happen is if we will start to spam the refresh button here, after a few requests, we will be blocked and we will see 4 to 9 too many requests. Okay, so the module comes with much more. We have access to basic auth, as I mentioned, the cross-site request forgery, and many more. So make sure to check out Nuxt security documentation to get the best out of it. Let me go back to the presentation. So this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of security patterns. And I want to tell you that there are no unbreakable systems. There are only those that who are so difficult or time consuming to break that attackers will basically give up. So my recommendation for you is to be those systems. Be those systems that are difficult to break so that the attackers will give up. Thank you very much for being here with me. Make sure to check out Nuxt Security. If there is something that you would see in the module that is missing, or something could be done better, or anything, just let us know through issues or through discussions. We are always open for feedback. And if you'd like to reach me somewhere, make sure to do so through X or Dev2. I'm there at Jakub Andrzejewski. I also have a YouTube channel called Jakub Andrzejewski, the same, and GitHub at Barosian. So thanks for having me and enjoy the rest of the conference.
So regarding the question you posted on the poll, it was, what are the 3 most popular security issues in the latest edition of OWASP Top 10 Documents? And at some point the public was right, because Jakub actually made a trick, and he meant that all of those 3 are valid answers. And at some point we had a 50-50, but now, the people who chose broken access control are wrong, injection are wrong, and cryptographic failures are wrong, because they are all those 3 at the same time. So that was a trick question. But it's all right. Let's fall back and get into some Q&As. From all the questions that we had, one of the most interesting ones is there any tools to test my Nuxt app for any security issues?
Sure. So first of all, you can just type securityheaders.com. This website will allow you to audit your website for security headers, and if they are passing the recommended values. So it works similarly to Lighthouse, for example, or pagespeed.dev, where you input a URL you want to audit. But in that case, it is about performance. But in our case, it's about the validation of security headers. So for sure, securityheaders.com. I don't have any more right now, but probably if you input in Google security headers scanner, there might probably be even more tools that could give you the right answer.
Okay, makes sense. Another one that we have is one of mine, but still the most voted. Do you think a front-end developer should know those security concerns at all?
Yeah, I would say that it is equally important, not in a way that as a front-end developer, you will be developing the same amount of security regulations or security protections to your application. It's more like if you are aware of security issues that can appear in modern web applications, you are less likely to leak some kind of information. It can be an access token, it can be a page that should only be available for a user that has appropriate rights. So I always believe that if you are aware of these issues, security issues, you are less likely to have this kind of risks in your web application, even as a front-end developer. Because initially, when we think about front-end development, we think about styles, about HTML, maybe some kind of animations. But honestly, nowadays, more and more logic is being forwarded to the front-end. We have frameworks such as Nuxt or Nuxt, where we can basically build full-stack applications with it. So considering that these frameworks are front-end first, that comes with a bit of backend as well, these front-end developers need to have this security knowledge, at least the basic one of the risks. You might not need to understand every risk and know every security protection, but if you are aware of these risks, you're less likely to have them in your web app.
Yeah, I also usually have a lot of people on Stack Overflow asking, hey, so I have this token, what do I do with it? Like, how do I hide it? And sometimes the tricky thing is you have public tokens and you have private ones. So depending on that, then you need to find a way to deal with that. So yeah, usually what I recommend to those people is just like, hey, you probably have a backend team, just go and speak with the people there, so that way they can explain you a bit more. Because otherwise, if you like a private token with some money or like some service behind it, yeah, it can be a bit tricky. What's about Nuxt Security and servers, SSG apps, like static generated apps?
Yeah, sure. So if we think about security in general, we usually think about applications that involve some kind of a server. Because, for example, even with response headers, as its name suggests, it's like response headers. So they need to be sent from the server to the client, and the client, when receives these headers, this browser now knows how to behave. But with Nuxt Security, we also implemented it in a way that even if your application is static, like static SSG app, you still can benefit from some sort of the security improvements from the module. First of all, you get the content security policy as a HTTP equiv, I believe I pronounced it correctly, like the meta tag. And this is one thing. And one more thing is that you also get the support of remove console loggers. This is like a small utility function that allows to basically hide the console logs, console debugs, and other console methods that you might just forget about while developing. I had situations where I'll maybe not leaked some information, but I left some console logs in the places where they shouldn't be.
Okay. I guess that's all. Thanks very much. Again, if you have any other questions, like if they are not answered, you can go to Discord, you can ask it there. And a few speakers already gave answers on past topics. So yeah, feel free to do the same if you really want to get the answer. So thanks again for your participation. Jakub, I wish you an amazing day. Let's continue the conference.
Thanks, see you.